Well, again, it was because I had well, what they were doing, the government was doing, were full medical evaluations of these individuals. And one of the evaluations they wanted was a blood analysis. And so they asked around and they said, who makes the best blood analysis? Who does the best blood analysis? Oh, you need to go talk to this guy Nolan at Stanford. He invented this device called blah, blah, blah. Co-invented. The actual inventor gets mad at me when I say I invented it. He invented it. Scott, you invented it. Scott Tanner, University of Toronto. Great guy. He brought it to me, and then I turned it into an immunology tool. And so they said, go talk to this guy. He's got this all worked up and operating. And so that's how I got officially brought in. And because I didn't run them out of the room screaming, and I returned their phone calls afterwards,
The government?
the government, after we started, now I advise several groups. And not because I'm certainly not the kind of physicist that they need. And they have better physicists working on the problem, literally.
Of the
In the so-called legacy program.
but working on the health issues or on
No, working
propulsion
on
issues?
propulsion
Okay,
and,
propulsion.
and that stuff. And so, um, one of the things I think is interesting about understanding what might happen to people if they get too close to some object radiating some strange effect is it tells you something about the engine. I mean, if you stand behind a fighter jet while it's about to take off on an aircraft carrier, you're going to have scorched burns across your body. Now, if I didn't know that the fighter jet existed, I could at least understand that heat was involved in the production of the propulsion of the object that hurt them. So there's value to understanding what happens to these people. But there was an interesting side observation that we made in looking at all of the brains of these individuals, which was we noticed a common feature in their basal ganglia at the head of the caudate putamen of a neural density cluster that was not seen in everyday people. And what eventually we found that it was it's an indication of a form of intelligence and intuition. It's actually this area of the brain is involved in intuition. So when we figured out that this was intuition, it turned out that the medical community at large was also finding out that this was intuition. And the reason why it was concentrated in this group of individuals is because they're high functioning individuals who need to work and use their intuition to operate in the environment in which they do. So it's nothing to do with UFOs or UAPs. It had to do with just their level of required functionality. It's interesting because it's the area of the brain that lights up when you have an intuitive leap. Now, that's kind of the value of basic research. We didn't go looking for that, but we found that. And then I later did a study with another group at Harvard with brains of normals, autistics, and schizophrenics as bookends to normal to show that, in fact, this feature was directly involved with intelligence. Because we had full medical and testing evaluations on all these people, but that there were alterations in the caudate putamen of these of the schizophrenics, sorry, or autistics that we could actually create a pattern match for, and that the caudate putamen was involved in this. Now, why I find that interesting is that, from an intelligence standpoint, is I know several functional autistics who are very, very, very smart, but as we know, autistics often have social interaction disorders. But we learned something about the caudate putamen there, and on the flip side, schizophrenics, maybe a lot of maybe a lot of the people who are in mental health institutions who are schizophrenics, maybe it's because they're just so creative that their brains go off into fantasy lands. but it's part of that spectrum. But that was and we published 3 papers on this. And that came because of the medical study that I did with the government at the time. So, and we contributed to the medical literature unexpectedly. And it had nothing to do with UAP.